Southern Ontario, July 6th. Some of my favorite politicians. Christine Anderson. We all know who she is. She did a tour of Canada a couple months back. She's the EU parliamentary member who stood up in the EU Parliament when Trudeau was there and said, "Mr. Trudeau," well, I won't paraphrase her, "you're a tyrant and a dictator and you don't belong here. Quote, please excuse yourself," unquote. She wasn't the only one who did. That is, tell Trudeau to his face at the EU Parliament that the world knows him for what he is. Another of my favorite politicians is Meloni from Italy. Meloni? Now, I don't know a lot about her background, but the left calls her a far-right extremist. She's running Italy, but she's popular with right, center, and a lot of the left, as Italy's doing well under her reign, economically and with the migrant issues and etc., and no doubt the legacy she was left by the left previous to her. But closer to home here in Canada, some of my favorite politicians. Rachel Dancho? Forgive me, I'm not sure quite how to pronounce it. Now there's a hard-working politician. She's a bright lady. But she doesn't just sit in the back bench and collect her paycheck and go home. She's front and center in Parliament, but she's also on every board and committee and investigative committee going. Bill C-11, 18, 21. She's everywhere. And I like her because she has this way of tilting her head and looking at, when she's in committee, asking one of the Liberals a question, knowing well and full it's not going to get answered. And the contemptuous tilt of her head, and she'll literally say, well, okay, just, you're not answering that, let's move on. She earns her salt, that girl, and I like her. Another Conservative Party member I like is Cheryl Gallant. The tone of her voice and everything, she sounds like a primary grade school teacher, but she is scathing in Parliament, and she posts her own videos on YouTube and TikTok and stuff talking about what's happening with the different bills and stuff. Another hard-working straight shooter as far as I'm concerned. Now this brings us to Leslyn Lewis. It's a shame, I think, that during the party race where Poilievre became head of the Conservative parties, she was a contender, and I think it's a shame that she didn't get the head of the Conservative Party rather than Poilievre, for two reasons. Let me explain. If you've seen Leslyn Lewis she did a split screen Zoom or whatever with Jordan Peterson talking about the WEF and their penetration into Canada, and a lot of the WEF and WHO agendas that the Trudeau government has signed on to. Leslyn Lewis has her eye on that ball, and she's the only politician in Canada, really, besides Maxime Bernier, that I see talking about this. I think it's a shame she didn't become the head of the party, really. Which brings me to Pierre Poilievre. Two complaints with him. The first is he admonished Leslyn Lewis and three other Conservative Party members for simply having dinner with Christine Anderson when she was visiting here in Canada, and referred to Christine Anderson as a right-wing extremist and Nazi supporter. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Poilievre, that was it for me, man. When I heard that one, you're done in my books, buddy. I've questioned him since 2019. He was a shoo-in for the leadership of the party, and we could have been rid of Trudeau then had he have taken the party. Same in 2021. Got no faith in the man. Another guy I like, well, first guy I've mentioned, but I like Dane Lloyd. He's a lot like Rachel Dancho. He's everywhere. He's on every committee. He's a hard-working guy. And the same deal, he'll ask a question and you can see him, just the contempt on his face, and he's like, well, you're not answering that? We just move on. He pops up everywhere. I like these politicians who actually work for a living. I mean, they're trying. With the signing of supply and confidence agreements, it's in vain. They have as much clout as this channel hat I'm wearing does, but hey, at least they're in there plugging along, trying to earn their keep. Another guy likes Larry the Bullet. Larry Bulldog Brock. You know that guy? He's built like a brick house, you know what I mean? Same thing, he sits on these committees, he's everywhere, and same deal, except his contempt is even less veiled than Dane and Rachel's. He just looks at them and shakes his head. He's like, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, well, usually Mr. or Mrs. Chair, is just, they're wasting my time. Can I move to the next question? We do have a few hard-working politicians up in Ottawa, and there are others I could mention as well, but, well, I'm already rambling. Anyways, those are some of my favorite politicians.